London, 1837. Everyone said the Whitmore name gleamed like polished silver. Everyone forgot that silver tarnishes. Charlotte stood by her window in a pale blue empire gown with lace at the sleeves. Her hair fell like sunlight over snow. Her smile was perfect. Her hands were not. They trembled. The city murmured outside. Carriages rattled over stones. Inside, whispers were sharper than wheels. Her father liked a perfect tableau. He liked a grateful daughter. He liked to be adored. He did not like Charlotte. He said she cried like her mother. He said her silence was a weapon. He said everything broke when she entered a room. The servants kept their eyes down. The housekeeper pressed a warm cup of tea into Charlotte's hands. "Drink, my lady." Charlotte nodded. She could not taste anything. Her ribs hurt where a careless shove had found them last night. No one saw. No one ever saw. Society loved a stage. Society ignored the wings. Rumors called the Whitmores a family of gold. Education, music, charities, Sunday smiles. People adored a polished lie. Charlotte learned to curtsy to it. She learned to bow to the ache behind her ribs. She learned that grief makes neat folds when you hide it under silk. A letter lay on the escritoire. Her father's seal. She had not been allowed to open it. She did not need to. The city already buzzed. A match was being arranged. A lord of impeccable fortune. A lord of imperfect soul. They called him Lord Rathbone. They called him efficient. They called him decisive. They did not say the word cruel. They let the word sit behind fans. They let the word rest in the shadow of chandeliers. Charlotte had heard enough. She could map the bruise on his first wife's memory without seeing it. The housekeeper found her again. Her name was Maeve. Maeve had raised Charlotte on lullabies and caution. Leave if you can. Find a home that looks like peace. Charlotte stared at the garden. A thin winter sun pressed pale gold on hedges. She wanted to breathe where no one measured her breath. She wanted a life where a touch meant comfort. She wanted laughter that did not cost blood. A figure paused by the far iron gate. A tall man in a navy tailcoat, a profile in clean lines, a posture that did not bow to anything. Her heart jolted. Memory made a small door open. A boy with a grass-stained smile. A boy who had given her a ribbon when her mother died. A boy who had promised to come back when he could read the constellations. Edmund. The name rose like a hymn. She blinked and the figure moved on. The city swallowed him. Hope burned like a candle in wind. It would not stay. Her father entered without knocking. He wore a dark coat and a triumphant mouth. He did not ask if she was well. He never asked. He informed. "You will shine tonight." He adjusted the lace at her shoulder with cold fingers. "Do not embarrass me." He left the scent of expensive soap in control. Charlotte exhaled after he was gone. She counted to 10. She counted again. Counting felt like a prayer that did not need an altar. Night came with candelabras and 1,000 glances. The ballroom glowed like a promise and a threat. Crystal shimmered above silk. Painted panels told stories of gods who never bled. Ladies floated in empire gowns with seed pearl borders. Gentlemen wore tailcoats cut to flatter power. Music lifted. Laughter hunted. Charlotte stepped into the light and blue. She carried her smile like a shield. Her bodice was embroidered with tiny forget-me-nots. Her gloves were white and spotless. Her reputation pretended to be the same. A cluster of matrons tilted fans. They liked to speak in perfumes. Poor child. Lovely child. Useful child. Her father paraded her past fortunes and appetites. Charlotte curtsied until her knees hummed. She moved like obedience. She breathed like defiance. The orchestra shifted to a waltz. The floor became a tide. Lord Rathbone arrived in black. His waistcoat flashed gold thread. His eyes were pale, clever, and unkind. He bowed with the exact degree required. He did not look at her face. He measured her shoulders. He measured her father with a smile. He asked for the honor. He took her hand. His grip was precise. He guided her like a purchase already made. Charlotte followed. Her heart kept count with the violins. 1, 2, do not faint. 3, survive. The waltz turned. Rathbone leaned close. "You will find me a sensible husband." He did not ask. He declared. Charlotte lifted her chin. Sensible things should not require bruises. He laughed. The sound was quiet and cold. The turn brought the doorway into view. A man stood there like the room was a chessboard and he knew every piece. Navy tailcoat, ivory cravat, glossed boots that had seen actual roads, a signet ring that meant more than money. He watched the dance as if listening for a secret. Charlotte missed a step. Rathbone frowned. Focus. Charlotte focused on the stranger instead. His gaze met hers. Heat and clarity, recognition and alarm, time folded like a fan. Edmund. The boy had become a man. The man had become something else entirely. The whispers found a name. The Duke of Ashbourne. Newly returned. Infamously successful. He owned mines in Cornwall and ships that outran storms. He donated libraries and broke monopolies. He smiled rarely. He bought entire industries when bored. He was scandal and charity braided together. He was very inconvenient to powerful men who preferred their tables fixed. He moved into the room with the gravity of a planet. Women leaned. Men recalculated. Rathbone did not notice the recalculation. Rathbone considered himself the sum and remainder. The waltz ended. Charlotte stepped back. She curtsied. She wished she were a bird that knew where the open sky was. Rathbone offered his arm. She did not take it. Not quickly. Her father's brows sharpened across the room. The Duke crossed the floor. He did not rush. He did not hesitate. His tailcoat cut a clean line through envy and perfume. He bowed to Charlotte. His eyes held the summer lane where two children had once traded secrets. Lady Charlotte. His voice was a calm sea. London had not rubbed it raw. Her name sounded safe in his mouth. Rathbone smiled with thin impatience. Your Grace, the Duke inclined his head. May I claim the next dance? It was not a question. It was a gentleman's rescue shaped like a social courtesy. Charlotte breathed. Her father's nod landed like an order. Rathbone released her. The orchestra began a set that always made the room sigh. The Duke took Charlotte's hand, warm, steady, not demanding. He led with attention rather than command. She moved. Something inside her loosened. Not all touch hurts. The thought rose like a shy bird. He noticed the flinch she could not hide. He softened the turn. You still count when you are frightened. Her lips parted. How did you know? He smiled, a brief curve. You counted stars that summer. You counted paths to the orchard. You counted how many ways a heart could break and keep beating. Charlotte swallowed. The music swelled. He brought her close enough to feel safe, far enough to breathe. He smelled of oak and clean linen and rain. She studied the knot of his cravat to steady herself. Edmund. The name lived on her tongue like a secret chapel. He lifted his gaze to hers. I came home because of a letter. Her pulse stumbled. Whose letter? A loyal voice. A voice that asked me to see what society refuses to see. He pivoted her through light. She saw her father's watchful stance. She saw Rathbone calculating angles. She saw 1,000 eyes and none of them knew her. The Duke lowered his tone. I made an agreement today. It will free you. Charlotte missed a step again. Her fan shook slightly in her sash. Free how? The word hardly existed in her language. He turned her so that her father could not read her mouth. I purchased a promise. It had your name on it. Her breath left and returned like a startled bird. What promise? He held her with the safety of a well-made harbor. A father's signature. A transfer of guardianship under the law of settlements. She stung with shock. He saw it. He gentled his voice. It means you will not belong to a cruel man. Charlotte found the floor again. She found the count. She found an island inside the music. Why would you do this? He was very calm. Because someone once tied a ribbon on my wrist when I was grieving. Because someone once looked at me like I could be kind even when I was not strong. Because loyalty is not a rumor. A hush rippled near the doorway. Rathbone had vanished. Her father had not. He cut through guests like a blade sheathed in etiquette. Charlotte's shoulders tightened. The Duke shifted so her father would need to circle. He gave her a second to breathe. He gave her a choice inside a room that gave her none. A violin cried sweet and high. Charlotte felt tears press. She held them where they would not be seen. The Duke leaned closer. I will not force you. Say the word and I will burn the paper. Say the word and I will fight another way. Charlotte stared at his gloved hand around hers. She looked at the blue silk on her arm. She looked at the life she had survived and the life waiting like a locked door. She leaned closer with courage that felt like shaking. People will say I am a fortune. He nodded once. Let them say it. People will say you are arrogant. He considered. Sometimes I am. Tonight I am stubborn for the right reason. Her mouth tugged toward a real smile. He noticed and looked grateful. A set ended. Applause flickered. The Duke did not release her until she signaled she was ready. She signaled with a breath steadier than the last one. Rathbone reappeared. He wore a new smile. It was worse than the old one. Her father reached them with that polished stride society mistook for grace. My dear. He did not look at her. He looked at the Duke. Your grace honors our family. The Duke inclined his head as if addressing a boardroom he preferred to own. The honor is mine. Charlotte felt the ground tilt. The Duke's gaze stayed steady. I have business with Lord Whitmore. Her father's mouth thinned. Not in a ballroom. The Duke agreed with a pleasant lie. Not in a ballroom. Charlotte felt Maeve watching from the doorway. Maeve gave a small nod. Courage at your shoulder. The Duke's eyes returned to Charlotte. I will ask one question. It will decide everything. He waited. He let her own voice open the door. Charlotte lifted her chin. Ask. He said the words like a vow shaped as a riddle. Do you want a life that does not require you to disappear to be safe? Silence rang louder than the music. Her father's jaw nodded. Rathbone smiled like a trap. Charlotte's heart struck the inside of her ribs and then learned to answer. Yes. The chandelier flame seemed to tilt toward her. The orchestra began the next dance. A gossip at the edge of the floor inhaled a rumor and tasted honey. The Duke offered his arm again. Her father spoke one word. No. The room tightened. The Duchess of Wrexham dropped her fan and did not pick it up. The Duke did not look away from Charlotte. Choose. His hand waited. Her father closed a fist at his side. Rathbone's eyes glinted with purchase denied. Charlotte took a step. It was small. It was everything. The candles hissed. The violins climbed. The city held its breath. She placed her hand on the Duke's arm. Heat raced up her wrist. Her father smiled a social smile that would cut later. The Duke looked at Whitmore with the patience of granite. Then with the force of a tide, the doors at the far end opened. A footman hurried. A silver tray shook. A folded paper lay on it. For Lord Whitmore. Urgent. The wax bore a crest Charlotte did not recognize. Her father broke the seal with a flick. He read, he paled. The room smelled suddenly of scandal and winter. He looked up at the Duke with something like fear. The musicians faltered. The note slipped from Lord Whitmore's hand. Maeve bent and caught it before it hit the floor. She did not show her face when she read it. She only went very still. The Duke's voice cut softly through the hush. What has changed? Whitmore swallowed. He tried to smile. He could not find the right muscles. He looked at Charlotte as if she were a debt he could no longer pay. He looked at Rathbone as if the man were a ledger on fire. He looked at the Duke as if the truth had learned to walk. The chandeliers flickered. The tray shook again. Maeve lifted her head. Her eyes found Charlotte. The household knows. The city will know by morning. She folded the paper once like a goodbye. She placed it in Charlotte's hand. Charlotte felt the weight of ink and consequence. A single line faced her like a blade and a promise. Your mother did not die the way you were told. The violins crashed back to life as if a conductor had demanded gaiety. Laughter restarted like a clock rewound too hard. Charlotte stood in the middle of painted gods and polished lies. The Duke's arm steadied her. Rathbone's smile sharpened. Her father's mask broke at the corner. Charlotte closed her fingers over the letter. Some truths cut. Some truths free. Which one was this? Which one would she become? The city danced. The room watched. The night leaned in to listen. The ballroom still glittered, pretending nothing had happened. But London always heard everything. By morning, Charlotte's name would sip tea in every parlor, and her father would find no sugar left to sweeten his disgrace. The Duke escorted her out before the next waltz began. He did not ask permission. He simply offered his arm, and she accepted, trembling. Outside, the cold night wrapped around them like truth. Gas lamps flickered against the fog. The carriages whispered rumors to the stones. Charlotte's hand still held the folded letter. The paper felt heavier than any jewel she had ever worn. Edmund glanced at it. Will you let me see? She hesitated. It says my mother didn't die the way I was told. He waited, no questions. No judgment. Just quiet space, the kind that healed more than it hurt. She continued. My father said she was sick, that she never woke up. But this, her voice broke. This says she was trying to leave. That he stopped her. The Duke's jaw tightened. His breath left a cloud in the cold air. He said nothing because rage that deep needs silence first. When he spoke again, it was steady. Then you were right to fear him. Charlotte's eyes filled. What will happen now? You will not return to that house. I have nowhere else. He turned to her. His face softened. No longer the Duke that terrified London's bankers, but the boy who once held her hand when she scraped her knee. You have a place, he said. My home is large enough for ghosts and hope. She wanted to protest. She wanted to say it would ruin her name. But her name was already ash. He lifted her chin gently. Charlotte, I made a vow when I bought your freedom. I meant to give you peace, not chains. Her breath hitched. People will think. He smiled faintly. Let them. The world always thinks too much. The carriage waited. The coachman stared ahead, pretending not to exist. The door opened with a creak that sounded almost ceremonial. Charlotte hesitated. London spun behind her, a city built on secrets, silk, and survival. She stepped in. The Duke followed. Inside, the air was warmer, scented with cedar and rain. The door shut, cutting off the gossiping night. For the first time in years, she was leaving without permission. The carriage moved. Charlotte looked at the man beside her. His gloved hand rested loosely on his knee, powerful but controlled. Why did you come back? She asked. He turned his head slowly. Because someone wrote to me. The maid, he nodded. She said if I waited another week, you'd be gone. Married to a man who breaks more than glass. Charlotte pressed her fingers against her lips. A single tear slipped free, bright as moonlight. She risked her life for that letter, Edmund said. And I risked my reputation for this moment. She looked at him. Why? He smiled, small and tired. Because you once told me kindness was never wasted. Her heart squeezed. I was a child. You were right. The carriage slowed. Through the fog, iron gates appeared, tall, ornate, bearing his crest. The Ashbourne estate. The kind of place people whispered about but never entered. Welcome home, he said quietly. She shook her head. It's not my home. He met her eyes. It will be until you decide otherwise. The carriage stopped. Footmen appeared, bowing deeply. Inside the house, firelight glowed through tall windows. Charlotte hesitated at the threshold. Her hand trembled again. Edmund noticed. He offered his arm. Not every door leads to pain. She took it. The marble floor echoed beneath her slippers. Paintings watched from gilded frames. Generations of dukes who believed in property, not tenderness. But tonight the house felt different. Like it had been waiting for her. Edmund led her to a sitting room. The fire snapped softly. He gestured toward the armchair nearest the flames. Sit. Warm yourself. She obeyed, exhausted. Her reflection shimmered in the glass. A woman who seemed happy, but whose soul still hid behind her smile. The Duke poured tea himself. It startled her more than the rescue. You shouldn't, she said. He handed her the cup anyway. Dukes are terrible at rules. Charlotte managed a faint laugh. It sounded strange in her own ears. He watched her with quiet attention. You don't have to pretend here. Her throat tightened. I don't know who I am without pretending. Then we'll find out, he said simply. Silence lingered. Comfortable, fragile, real. The firelight flickered across his face, tracing the sharp lines softened by concern. Charlotte lowered her gaze to the letter again. What if it's true, she whispered. What if he killed her? Edmund leaned forward. Then we uncover it. How? He met her eyes, steady as a vow. Together. A clock chimed somewhere in the house. The sound carried through the stillness like fate reminding them it existed. Charlotte's fingers closed around the letter. She breathed deeply as if air had memory. Outside the wind rose. The city turned its gossiping face toward the Ashbourne estate. By dawn everyone would know that the perfect Whitmore family had cracked, that the Duke had taken a woman under scandalous protection. That love might yet cause the grandest ruin of all. But for now, in that quiet room, a wounded girl and a stubborn Duke sat by the fire, and the world outside could wait. The ballroom still glittered, pretending nothing had happened. But London always heard everything. By morning, Charlotte's name would sip tea in every parlor, and her father would find no sugar left to sweeten his disgrace. The Duke escorted her out before the next waltz began. He did not ask permission. He simply offered his arm, and she accepted, trembling. Outside, the cold night wrapped around them like truth. Gas lamps flickered against the fog. The carriages whispered rumors to the stones. Charlotte's hand still held the folded letter. The paper felt heavier than any jewel she had ever worn. Edmund glanced at it. "Will you let me see?" She hesitated. "It says my mother didn't die the way I was told." He waited, no questions. No judgment. Just quiet space, the kind that healed more than it hurt. She continued. "My father said she was sick, that she never woke up. But this," her voice broke, "this says she was trying to leave, that he stopped her." The Duke's jaw tightened. His breath left a cloud in the cold air. He said nothing because rage that deep needs silence first. When he spoke again, it was steady. "Then you were right to fear him." Charlotte's eyes filled. "What will happen now?" "You will not return to that house. I have nowhere else." He turned to her. His face softened. No longer the Duke that terrified London's bankers, but the boy who once held her hand when she scraped knee. "You have a place," he said. "My home is large enough for ghosts and hope." She wanted to protest. She wanted to say it would ruin her name. But her name was already ash. He lifted her chin gently. "Charlotte, I made a vow when I bought your freedom. I meant to give you peace, not chains." Her breath hitched. "People will think." He smiled faintly. "Let them. The world always thinks too much." The carriage waited. The coachman stared ahead, pretending not to exist. The door opened with a creak that sounded almost ceremonial. Charlotte hesitated. London spun behind her, a city built on secrets, silk, and survival. She stepped in. The Duke followed. Inside, the air was warmer, scented with cedar and rain. The door shut, cutting off the gossiping night. For the first time in years, she was leaving without permission. The carriage moved. Charlotte looked at the man beside her. His gloved hand rested loosely on his knee, powerful but controlled. "Why did you come back?" she asked. He turned his head slowly. "Because someone wrote to me." "The maid?" He nodded. "She said if I waited another week, you'd be gone. Married to a man who breaks more than glass." Charlotte pressed her fingers against her lips. A single tear slipped free, bright as moonlight. "She risked her life for that letter," Edmund said. "And I risked my reputation for this moment." She looked at him. "Why?" He smiled, small and tired. "Because you once told me kindness was never wasted." Her heart squeezed. "I was a child. You were right." The carriage slowed. Through the fog, iron gates appeared, tall, ornate, bearing his crest. The Ashbourne estate, the kind of place people whispered about but never entered. "Welcome home," he said quietly. She shook her head. "It's not my home." He met her eyes. "It will be until you decide otherwise." The carriage stopped. Footmen appeared, bowing deeply. Inside the house, firelight glowed through tall windows. Charlotte hesitated at the threshold. Her hand trembled again. Edmund noticed. He offered his arm. "Not every door leads to pain." She took it. The marble floor echoed beneath her slippers. Paintings watched from gilded frames, generations of dukes who believed in property, not tenderness. But tonight the house felt different, like it had been waiting for her. Edmund led her to a sitting room. The fire snapped softly. He gestured toward the armchair nearest the flames. "Sit, warm yourself." She obeyed, exhausted. Her reflection shimmered in the glass. A woman who seemed happy but whose soul still hid behind her smile. The Duke poured tea himself. It startled her more than the rescue. "You shouldn't," she said. He handed her the cup anyway. "Dukes are terrible at rules." Charlotte managed a faint laugh. It sounded strange in her own ears. He watched her with quiet attention. "You don't have to pretend here." Her throat tightened. "I don't know who I am without pretending." "Then we'll find out," he said simply. Silence lingered. Comfortable, fragile, real. The firelight flickered across his face, tracing the sharp lines softened by concern. Charlotte lowered her gaze to the letter again. "What if it's true?" she whispered. "What if he killed her?" Edmund leaned forward. "Then we uncover it." "How?" He met her eyes, steady as a vow. Together. A clock chimed somewhere in the house. The sound carried through the stillness like fate reminding them it existed. Charlotte's fingers closed around the letter. She breathed deeply as if air had memory. Outside, the wind rose. The city turned its gossiping face toward the Ashbourne estate. By dawn, everyone would know that the perfect Whitmore family had cracked, that the Duke had taken a woman under scandalous protection. That love might yet cause the grandest ruin of all. But for now, in that quiet room, a wounded girl and a stubborn Duke sat by the fire, and the world outside could wait. Morning broke with a pale, reluctant light. Ashbourne Manor was already awake. Servants whispered in corridors scented with lavender and curiosity. London had not slept. Every drawing room hummed with one delicious sentence. The Duke had brought home a woman who was not his wife. Charlotte woke in a bed softer than clouds and heavier than guilt. Silk sheets, sunlight filtered through lace curtains, and the uneasy feeling of being safe for the first time in years. Her body refused to believe it. She waited for shouting, for footsteps, for orders. None came, only a soft knock. "Breakfast, your ladyship." The title startled her. She rose, wrapping herself in a pale blue robe trimmed with white ribbons. Her reflection stared back from the mirror, calm pale, still a little broken. A tray waited by the door. Tea, scones, strawberries. A folded note beside the napkin. She unfolded it with trembling fingers. "My staff will obey you as they obey me. Take the morning to walk. The garden helps with breathing." No signature. He did not need one. Charlotte smiled despite herself. The Duke of Ashbourne gave orders even when he was being kind. She walked through the manor slowly, her slippers whispering across marble floors. Portraits watched her with cold eyes and heavy frames. Generations of men who believed in legacy, not mercy. The garden was vast. Roses climbed stone walls like rebels. A fountain murmured secrets to the wind. For the first time, Charlotte let herself breathe deeply. Freedom smelled like rain and lilac. A familiar voice startled her. "You're awake early." She turned. Edmund stood at the edge of the path, coat undone, cravat loose, hair slightly damp from the mist. Too perfect for an hour when the world should still be yawning. Charlotte curtsied awkwardly. "Habit." He laughed softly. "You don't have to do that here." "Old habits die slower than scandals," she said. He smiled. "I heard London died of boredom last night. So they revived themselves by inventing stories about us." She blushed. "What did they say?" "That I abducted you, that you seduced me, that we married in secret, that I lost my fortune. And which one is true?" He looked at her, sunlight glinting in his eyes. "The only true thing is that you are here." Charlotte looked away. Her hands found the edge of her sleeve. "You shouldn't have done it. Bringing me here like this. People will say worse things. People always do. It keeps them from noticing their own misery." He stepped closer. Charlotte could feel the warmth of him before his shadow touched her. "You need time," he said quietly, "and I can wait." She nodded, eyes down. She wanted to believe that patience existed, that kindness didn't always hide a price. Inside, a maid passed by the window. The staff pretended to be invisible, but curiosity danced behind their lowered eyes. The Duke turned toward the manor. "You'll have your own wing," he said. "No one will disturb you. If you need anything, tell Mrs. Wren." Charlotte hesitated. "And you?" He paused at the door. "I'm not so easy to order around." His grin was brief and dangerous, and then he was gone. She stayed in the garden, tracing the lines of marble benches and blooming roses. Everything felt too gentle, too kind. Her body didn't know what to do with peace. By afternoon, gossip had reached the servants' hall. They whispered that the Duke had finally fallen in love. Others whispered that he'd lost his mind. Charlotte spent the evening in the library. Books smelled safer than people. She found a small volume of poetry. It opened on a page marked by an old ribbon. The poem spoke of healing by firelight. Her fingers trembled when she reached the last line. "A wounded heart does not need pity. It needs to be believed." A tear slipped onto the paper.
She didn't wipe it away.
Behind her, the door creaked. She turned, startled. Edmund stood there, one hand on the door frame. "I didn't mean to intrude." "You didn't," he stepped inside. Books and silence surrounded them like witnesses. "You found my favorite poem," he said. "It was yours. It was my mother's. She used to read it when I broke things I shouldn't have." Charlotte smiled faintly. "Then it's a family tradition." He raised an eyebrow. "You plan to break something?" "Only my fear," she said softly. For a moment, he forgot how to breathe. Her words hit him harder than any sword or scandal. He crossed the room slowly, stopped just close enough to touch her if she reached first. "If you ever doubt yourself, remember this," he said. "You are not what he made you believe." Charlotte's throat ached. Her heart did something dangerous. It hoped. She nodded. "And you, Duke, what are you?" He smiled. "A man who's trying not to ruin his second chance." A clock ticked between them. The space filled with things neither dared to say. Then a knock broke the spell. A footman bowed nervously in the doorway. "Your Grace, a messenger from the city. Urgent." Edmund's expression darkened. He took the sealed letter. "From whom?" The man hesitated. Lord Whitmore, sir. The air shifted. Charlotte froze. Her hands gripped the edge of the table. Edmund broke the seal. He read in silence, then folded the paper once and tucked it into his coat. What does it say? She whispered. He met her gaze. He wants to see you. Charlotte's pulse quickened. Fear tangled with something colder. He can't come here, no. But he wants you to come to him. Her breath shook. Why? He says he has something that belongs to you. The words hung in the air like a blade. Charlotte stared at the fire. What could it be? Edmund looked toward the window. His reflection burned in the glass beside hers. I don't know, he said, but I don't trust the man who sent it. Charlotte's voice dropped to a whisper. Neither do I. Outside the wind rose again. The house listened. And somewhere in London, Lord Whitmore smiled, because monsters always hear when courage be slower, as if the air had learned to listen. Charlotte sat by the window in her pale blue gown, watching the mist rise from the gardens. Her cup of tea had gone cold hours ago. She hadn't slept. The Duke had sent no message. No summons. No command. Only distance, and that frightened her more than anger ever could. When Mrs. Wren entered, Charlotte didn't turn. He left before dawn, the housekeeper said softly. Business in the city. Charlotte's heart sank. He went to see my father, didn't he? Mrs. Wren hesitated, then nodded. You know men of pride. They settle things before words turn to poison. Charlotte pressed her fingers to her temples. He shouldn't have gone alone. You don't face a viper with kindness. The housekeeper's eyes softened. He's not a man who loses easily, my lady. Charlotte tried to believe that, but dread already wrapped itself around her chest. Hours passed. Rain began to fall, steady and gray. She could almost feel the city breathing beyond the storm. By afternoon, the sound of hooves echoed through the courtyard. Her heart leapt before reason could stop it. She ran to the window. The Duke's carriage had returned. The door opened. But when Edmund stepped out, his expression wasn't victory. It was fury wrapped in restraint. Charlotte met him at the entrance, her hands trembling. What did he say? Edmund's jaw was tight. Too many things I can't repeat in daylight. Tell me anyway. He looked at her. Your father claims your mother's death was an accident, but he used the word taught before accident. That's not a word an innocent man chooses. Charlotte's breath caught. He knows I have the letter. Yes, and he's not pleased that I do. She stared at the floor. Her father's voice haunted her memory. Smooth, venomous, always right. He'll come for me. He won't. He can't. She looked up sharply. What did you do? Edmund's silence was the answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and deliberate. I paid him off. Not to protect him, but to own him. He'll never touch you again. Charlotte's lips parted. You bought him. I bought your safety. The difference is everything. She turned away, torn between gratitude and shock. The fire crackled in the hearth, filling the silence he refused to break. After a long moment, she said quietly, You shouldn't have interfered. He frowned. You call it interference. I call it breathing again. He stepped closer. Charlotte's pulse stuttered. His presence filled the room like gravity. He lowered his voice. Do you really think I'd stand by while he haunted you? Her eyes shimmered with tears. You can't save me from the memories. No, he said softly. But I can make new ones louder than the old. Something broke inside her defenses. Her breath trembled. His words didn't sound like comfort. They sounded like truth. Then she saw it in a crimson mark on his sleeve. Her blood went cold. Edmund followed her gaze. He sighed. It's not mine. What happened? He hesitated. Your father threw a glass at me, missed, hit his servant instead. Charlotte covered her mouth. And you just left. He smiled without humor. I'm a duke, Charlotte. Leaving is sometimes louder than shouting. She shook her head. You could have been killed. He stepped closer again. So could you every day in that house. The rain thundered harder. The world outside blurred to gray and silver. Charlotte's voice was almost a whisper. He said my mother tried to leave him. Edmund's expression darkened, and he stopped her. She nodded slowly. Tears welled in her eyes. He said she deserved it. A muscle jumped in Edmund's jaw. The firelight carved gold into his anger. He looked like a storm barely held in human shape. He exhaled sharply, trying to control himself. He'll never say her name again, he said, not without choking on it. Charlotte stepped closer to him. You shouldn't fight for me. He met her gaze. Then let me fight beside you. Her heart stung. He didn't look like the proud Duke everyone feared. He looked like a man who would burn the world if it meant she could smile again. For a moment, the silence between them was unbearable, and then the world tilted. Lightning flashed through the window. Thunder rolled. The candlelight flickered wildly. Charlotte gasped. A shadow moved past the glass, tall, slow, watching. She turned quickly. "Did you see that?" Edmund was already at the window. "Nothing but rain." "No," she whispered. Someone was there. He searched the courtyard, every muscle alert. "The guards are posted. No one gets through." Charlotte shivered. "Then why do I feel like he never left?" The Duke looked at her, his eyes hard but gentle. "Because fear doesn't use doors." He walked back to her side. "You're safe here, Charlotte. You have my word." She met his gaze. "And if your word breaks," he smiled faintly, "then I'll rebuild it one heartbeat at a time." The storm raged on. Inside, two souls learned that love can grow even in the ruins of terror. But outside, beyond the gates of Ashbourne, a letter was already on its way, sealed in red wax. It carried one line. "If she stays with you, I'll finish what her mother started." And so the shadow that once haunted Charlotte's childhood began to move again. Slow, patient, deadly. London moved fast when scandal wore perfume. By the end of the week, Charlotte's name had become a favorite dessert at every tea table. They called her the Blue Rose, the Duke's hidden treasure, the lost heiress who bewitched him. No one cared that the truth was darker and lonelier than gossip could imagine. At Ashbourne, life tried to continue. The staff bowed deeper. Letters arrived by the dozen, most unopened. The Duke read in silence, burned what deserved no answer, and kept his temper behind steady hands. Charlotte spent her days learning the corners of the house. She discovered rooms that smelled of cedar and forgotten laughter, a conservatory filled with jasmine, a library that could have been a cathedral. Each space carried the same quiet promise: "You are safe here." And yet at night she dreamed of footsteps, of her father's voice calling her name through rain, of her mother's perfume fading at the edge of memory. One morning she walked into the breakfast room and found Edmund standing by the window. He was reading a letter. His shoulders were tense, the kind of tension that meant danger had arrived wearing fine handwriting. She spoke softly. "More threats." He folded the paper carefully. "Not from your father." "From a lady?" Charlotte's brows lifted. "A lady," he nodded once. "Lady Selina Ashworth." The name struck the air like a dropped glass. Charlotte had heard it whispered even before the rumors began. Beautiful, ambitious, recently widowed. And once very close to the Duke. "Will she come here?" "She already has," he said. "She's in the drawing room." Charlotte's pulse stumbled. "Then I'll leave you to it." He stepped forward quickly. "You'll do no such thing." She hesitated. "It's improper." "So is breathing after a scandal," he said dryly. "And yet here we are." Charlotte tried not to smile. "You shouldn't make jokes about it." "I make jokes so I don't break furniture." That earned him a quiet laugh. But her nerves refused to settle. A woman from his past was sitting a few rooms away, waiting like temptation dressed in lace. Edmund seemed to read her thoughts. "Whatever she came for, I will handle it." She looked at him carefully. "And if she came for you, then she will leave disappointed." He left the room before she could reply. His footsteps faded, firm and deliberate. Charlotte waited, pretending to stir her tea. Minutes stretched thin. Then voices echoed from the hall. Smooth, feminine, sweet as poison. "Lady Selina, you changed, Edmund. You look tired. Power weighs even the strong. And you still enjoy watching people measure their words." Her laugh was soft. "I hear you've been keeping company with someone very fragile." Charlotte froze. Selina continued. "London says she's lovely, sad, easily shaped. A man like you could mold her into anything." Edmund's voice hardened. "You mistake me for someone who collects porcelain." Selina's tone sharpened. "Then you do love her." Charlotte's heart stopped. She shouldn't listen. But silence has always been the cruelest eavesdropper. Edmund said nothing for a long time. When he finally spoke, the words were low and dangerous. "Love is not a performance, Selina. You wouldn't understand." The sound of a slap cut through the air. Then the rustle of skirts. Then the door. Charlotte sat still, her hands trembling around her teacup. Moments later, the Duke entered. A faint red mark glowed on his cheek. He saw her, and something softened instantly in his eyes. "I should have known you'd hear." She stood slowly. "Did you deserve it?" "Probably," he said with a half-smile. But I didn't return it. Charlotte stepped closer. Why did she come? To warn me or to threaten me. Sometimes it's the same thing. About what? He looked out the window. About your father. He isn't finished. Charlotte's chest tightened. What did she say? That he's paying people to talk. That soon London will believe I forced you into this house. Her throat went dry. He can't, he already has. And people prefer lies that sparkle. She sat down slowly, trying to steady her breathing. And what will you do? Fight him the only way he understands, with patience that looks like peace. That's not peace, Edmund. That's war with manners. He smiled faintly. Then let the ballroom be our battlefield. She frowned. What do you mean? Tomorrow night, the Duchess of Wrexham hosts the first soiree of the season. Everyone who whispers about us will be there. We will attend. Charlotte's eyes widened. Attend. Together. He nodded. Let them see that you don't hide. Let them see what truth looks like when it stands unsure for a moment. They simply stared at each other. The fire snapped softly behind them. The rain had stopped. Somewhere beyond the window, London's chimneys exhaled smoke like gossip taking shape. Charlotte finally whispered, If I fall, don't come after me. Edmund stepped closer, his voice low and firm. I won't let you fall. Not this time. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to believe anything that sounded like hope. Outside thunder grumbled again, though the sky was clear. It was not the storm that had returned. It was something darker. Something wearing a familiar face. For on that same afternoon in a small tavern near Hyde Park, Lord Whitmore sat with a woman in black. Her eyes were sharp, her voice low. She said one thing. When the Duke brings her into the light, that is when we strike. The night of the Duchess's soiree arrived like a curtain lifting over danger. Every candle in London seemed to burn for that ballroom. Every roomer wore its finest silk. Ashbourne Manor had never been so restless. Servants hurried through corridors, pressing gowns, polishing boots, whispering about what the Duke intended to do. Charlotte stood before the mirror in her chamber. Her dress shimmered like frost in moonlight, pale blue satin embroidered with silver threads. The empire waist drew gently against her figure. Her hair was gathered high with delicate pins shaped like tiny stars. She looked beautiful. She also looked terrified. Mrs. Wren fussed with the hem. Hold still, my lady. London will stare tonight. That's what I'm afraid of, Charlotte murmured. The door opened. Edmund stood there, dressed in a deep navy coat trimmed with black velvet, his cravat crisp and perfect. He paused when he saw her. For a long moment words failed him. His gaze softened as if she had stolen every sound from the air. You shouldn't look at me like that, she said quietly. People will notice. Let them, he answered. Maybe they'll remember what grace looks like. She blushed, pretending to fix her gloves. You sound like a man planning trouble. Always, he said, shall we? The carriage ride was silent. The city passed by in streaks of gaslight and gossip. Charlotte's hands twisted in her lap. When they arrived, the Duchess's townhouse glowed like a temple. Dozens of carriages lined the street. The air shimmered with perfume and ambition. A herald's voice rose above the noise. His Grace, the Duke of Ashbourne. Lady Charlotte Whitmore. The sound rippled through the room like a dropped coin in water. Every head turned. Every fan paused mid-flutter. Charlotte froze for a heartbeat. Then Edmund offered his arm, steady, solid, unshaken. She took it. Whispers followed them like perfume. Some cruel, some curious. None brave enough to speak aloud. The Duchess of Wrexham approached, smile sharp as crystal. How lovely to see you, your Grace. And Lady Charlotte, what a surprise. Charlotte curtsied with perfect grace. Duchess. London does love surprises, doesn't it? The woman's smile wavered. Then she turned to Edmund. You've caused quite the stir. So I hear, he said lightly, but I prefer to cause meaning. The Duchess laughed politely and drifted away to spread what she'd just collected. Charlotte exhaled. I think she wanted to bite me. No, Edmund said. She wanted to understand how you shine without her permission. Before she could answer, music began. The first waltz. The room shifted, a sea of silk and expectation. Edmund turned to her. Dance with me. She hesitated. Everyone is watching. Then give them something worth watching. He took her hand and led her onto the floor. The orchestra swelled. The crowd parted like obedient gossip. His hand rested lightly at her waist. Her pulse fluttered beneath her skin. Each step was a battle between fear and freedom. He leaned closer, his voice low. You're trembling. So are you. That made him smile. We make a fine pair then. The room spun gently around them. Her blue skirt swept the marble, glimmering under candlelight. Every turn drew eyes, every glance whispered meaning. And then she saw her, Lady Selina, standing near the column, watching. Her gown was crimson, her expression polished venom. Charlotte faltered. Edmund noticed instantly. Ignore her. That's difficult when she looks like temptation wearing jewelry. He grinned faintly. You underestimate yourself. Selina began to move toward them. Graceful, predatory. The crowd sensed the storm before it broke. When the music ended, Selina was already there. She curtsied with mock sweetness. Your Grace, Lady Charlotte. What a breathtaking performance. Almost convincing. Charlotte's smile didn't waver. Almost convincing, Lady Selina. You speak from experience. A few nearby guests gasped softly. Selina's eyes narrowed. The Duke's smile was thin as steel. Careful, Selina. Your mask is slipping. Her voice turned sharp. She will ruin you, Edmund. She carries her father's curse. Charlotte froze. The room went utterly silent. Edmund stepped forward. His tone was calm, but the air seemed to tremble. Then let her curse me with honesty, for it's the first blessing this city has seen in years. Gasps spread like wildfire. Selina paled. He continued. You mistake pain for weakness, Selina, but the woman beside me has survived what you could never endure. If London wants a scandal, let them remember this night as the one where I chose truth over vanity. The silence was thunder. Then someone clapped. Then another. Then the room erupted in polite applause that hid its confusion. Selina turned and walked away, fury hiding behind grace. Charlotte could barely breathe. Her eyes glistened as she looked at Edmund. You just made me the story of the year. He offered his arm again. Then let's make it a beautiful one. They moved toward the balcony, escaping the roar of curiosity. The air outside was cool, fragrant with rain. London stretched below, glittering and faithless. Charlotte leaned against the balustrade. You didn't have to defend me. He looked at her, eyes softer now. I didn't defend you, Charlotte. I declared you. Her lips parted, caught between disbelief and something far warmer. That sounds dangerously close to affection. He smiled. It's closer than you think. A flash of lightning far away lit the sky. Charlotte's hand brushed his. He didn't pull away. Below, the city continued to talk. But above, under candlelight and thunder, the Duke and the girl who seemed happy began to rewrite their story. For the first time, it wasn't pain that held her still. It was wonder. London woke drunk on scandal. Every paper bore their names in thick black ink. The Duke and the fallen heiress. Love or madness at Ashbourne. Society divided over the blue rose. The city fed on whispers. And for once, Charlotte was not afraid of them. She sat in the breakfast room, hair loosely pinned, sunlight touching her face. A teapot steamed between untouched cups. A single newspaper lay folded on the table. She hadn't opened it. Footsteps echoed in the hall. Then Edmund entered, already in his dark coat, the same one that had made half of London sigh last night. He looked more tired than triumphant. You should eat, he said. You should rest, she replied. He poured himself tea instead. No sugar, no smile. They stayed in silence for a moment, the kind of silence that felt too full of words. She finally spoke. You made enemies last night. He sipped his tea. I was running out of friends anyway. That's not funny. It wasn't meant to be. She sighed softly. What happens now? Now, he said, they'll talk. Then they'll tire. Then they'll look for someone else to ruin. And us. He looked at her. We keep standing. Charlotte's gaze fell on the folded paper. Her name gleamed like a wound. I used to dream of being invisible. He leaned forward slightly, and now I wish I could stop shaking when people stare. He reached out slowly, waiting for her permission. When she didn't move away, his hand covered hers. His palm was warm, steady. They stare because they don't understand courage. You didn't hide, Charlotte. That frightens them. Her throat tightened. You make it sound noble. It is, he said simply. She looked up at him then, truly looked. The man who once belonged to London, now sitting across from her like he had burned the world for peace. The thought scared her, and warmed her. A knock interrupted them. Mrs. Wren entered holding a letter sealed with black wax. From the city, Your Grace. Edmund took it, broke the seal, scanned it quickly. His expression changed. What is it? She asked. He placed the letter on the table. Your father is gone. Charlotte froze. Gone, he nodded. His body was found in his study this morning. A pistol beside him. Her breath caught. No sound came out. Edmund rose immediately and came to her side. Charlotte. She stared at the floor. Gone. She said the word as if it were foreign. Not dead, not murdered, not released, just gone. He knelt beside her chair. I'm sorry. She shook her head slowly. No, you're not. And I'm not either. Tears came anyway. Quiet, slow, unwanted. They slid down her cheeks like rain, remembering how to fall. Edmund didn't speak. He stayed close, letting her silence unravel. When she finally looked up, her eyes were glass and light. He ruined everything he touched. Even his ending. You don't have to forgive him, Edmund said softly. She looked at the fire. I don't think forgiveness is for him. It's for me. He studied her, admiration hidden in his stillness. You surprise me every day. You say that as if it's a bad thing. It's terrifying, he said. She smiled faintly through tears. Then you understand how I feel around you. Their laughter came quietly, like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. But beneath the warmth, another truth stirred. Afternoon, the mansion filled with condolences and curiosity. Flowers from people who wanted to be seen caring. Letters dripping sympathy like perfume. Charlotte stayed in her room, staring at the window. Outside, the sky was soft gray, the color of endings. When Edmund entered later, she didn't turn. You should rest, he said gently. I tried, she whispered. But peace feels heavier than fear. He walked closer. Because you carried fear for too long. It became familiar. She turned then, eyes meeting his. What if I never learn how to live differently? Then I'll teach you. She blinked, uncertain if he meant it. How? One day at a time. He reached for her hand again. This time she didn't hesitate. His touch was patient. Not claiming, not demanding. Just there. He said quietly, You once told me that kindness wasn't wasted. Let me prove you right. Charlotte closed her eyes. The tears that came now didn't hurt. They cleansed. When she spoke again, her voice was steady. I think my mother would have liked you. He smiled softly. Then I hope I can deserve that someday. The room fell quiet again, filled with light and the sound of two hearts learning how to rest. Outside, London was already preparing its next scandal. But for once, Ashbourne Manor did not care. Because inside, love had stopped being a rumor. It had become something quieter, something that healed. The bells of St. Mary's tolled through the morning fog. Each sound rolled heavy over the city, calling London's pity to a man who deserved none. Lord Whitmore's funeral was the event of the week. Grief wore velvet. Hypocrisy wore diamonds. And Charlotte wore composure like armor. Her gown was black, the kind that swallowed light. A simple veil covered her face, softening her features, hiding the tremble in her lips. The carriage moved slowly through narrow streets lined with umbrellas and judgment. Edmund sat beside her, silent. His hand rested close, not touching, but near enough to remind her she wasn't alone. She watched the procession with a hollow calm. Men bowed. Women sniffed dramatically behind lace handkerchiefs. They mourned a reputation, not a man. When the ceremony ended, the whispers began again. Some pitied her. Some envied her freedom. All stared when she passed. Back at Ashbourne, rain followed them home. Charlotte went straight to the library, shedding her veil like a discarded lie. She wanted quiet, but grief has sharp edges. It cuts even when you don't touch it. She lit no candles. The dim gray light suited her. The Duke entered softly, stopping a few steps behind her. You did well, he said. I stood still, she answered. That's all I've ever done. He moved closer. Sometimes stillness is the bravest act. She turned to him, her eyes red but steady. They said kind things about him, Edmund. They called him generous, devoted, a pillar of society. He nodded slowly. People mistake cruelty and silence for dignity. Her voice cracked. He destroyed everything, and they called it grace. He reached out, gently touching her arm. Charlotte, the world doesn't know what you know, and maybe it never will. She looked at him then, searching his face for something she couldn't name. And you, what do you know? That you're the strongest person I've ever met. Her breath hitched. Strength doesn't stop the nightmares. No, he said softly, but it makes you wake up anyway. Before she could answer, the door creaked. Mrs. Wren appeared, nervous. Your Grace, my lady. There's a visitor. Charlotte frowned. Now. The housekeeper hesitated. She said it's urgent. Lady Selina Ashworth. The name dropped like cold water. Edmund stiffened. Send her to the drawing room, he said. Charlotte touched his arm. No, let her come here. He looked at her sharply. Are you certain? I'm done running, she said quietly. Selina entered moments later, elegant as ever. Black lace clung to her like sin that refused to repent. Her perfume arrived before her voice. I came to pay respects, she said smoothly, and to speak privately with Lady Charlotte. Edmund's jaw tightened. Anything you have to say, you can say in front of me. Selina smiled faintly. Oh, I'm sure that's true, but this concerns her mother. Charlotte's breath caught. My mother, Selina nodded. I knew her, you lie. No, child. Your mother and I shared a secret. She wasn't as weak as people thought. Edmund's tone sharpened. What are you talking about? Selina's eyes flicked toward him. The Duke might like to think he saved her, but the truth began long before he arrived. She turned back to Charlotte. Your mother didn't die trying to flee. She died trying to protect you. The room seemed to tilt. Charlotte gripped the table to keep her balance. Protect me? From what? Selina stepped closer, lowering her voice. Your father discovered something. Something she had hidden. Letters, documents, an inheritance meant for you alone. Charlotte's voice trembled. That's impossible. He said we were ruined. Selina smiled thinly. Ruined, yes, but not poor. He kept your inheritance sealed away. Your mother tried to retrieve it. He stopped her. Edmund's eyes narrowed. And you know this how? Because she trusted me, Selina said. I was her friend before I became your enemy. The silence that followed was unbearable. Charlotte's pulse thundered in her ears. Why are you telling me this now? Selina's expression faltered for the first time. Because your father's death frees more than you think. There are papers in his solicitor's office, signed and witnessed. You are his only heir. Everything is yours. Charlotte stared at her. Money, titles, land. None of it mattered. Only the truth. Selina turned to leave, then paused at the door. She looked back, her voice softer. Your mother wanted you to have a life that didn't begin with pain. Don't waste it on guilt. And then she was gone. For a long time, Charlotte didn't move. Rain struck the windows like a quiet drumbeat. The Duke finally spoke. She could be lying. Charlotte shook her head. No. She looked almost human when she said it. Edmund sighed. Then tomorrow we go to the solicitor. She nodded, but her eyes glistened. She whispered. All this time my mother tried to save me, and I thought she left me. He stepped closer. Charlotte. She turned toward him, and the fragile control she held all morning shattered. Tears spilled fast, unstoppable. He caught her before she fell. His arms were strong, steady, warm. She buried her face against his chest. He said nothing, only held her while her grief found its voice. When she finally looked up, her eyes met his. Neither spoke. The world had narrowed to the rhythm of shared breath. Her hand rested on his chest, feeling the steady beat beneath his coat. He brushed a strand of hair from her cheek. Their faces were inches apart. He hesitated, searching for her permission. She gave it with a trembling whisper. Don't stop. Their lips met, not with passion, but with release. Soft, honest, healing. It was the kind of kiss that didn't ask for more than understanding. When they parted, she smiled faintly through tears. You promised to teach me how to live. He smiled back. Lesson 1, Charlotte. Love doesn't hurt. Outside, the rain stopped. The first sunlight broke through the clouds, spilling gold over the city. And for the first time in years, Charlotte felt the warmth reach her heart. But fate rarely rests. Far across London, a locked drawer opened in Lord Whitmore's solicitor's office. Inside was a second will, signed in haste, sealed with red wax. And one sentence written in the late lord's hand. If she learns the truth, she must never know who helped her mother die. The next morning, London was gray again. A thin fog clung to the carriages outside, curling around the iron gates of Ashbourne like a secret refusing to die. Charlotte stood in the hallway wearing a dark blue cloak that matched her eyes. The Duke joined her, fastening his gloves. Neither spoke for a moment. Some truths needed silence as company. When they stepped outside, the wind smelled of rain and paper, the scent of the city before confessions. The carriage wheels cut through puddles as they made their way toward Fleet Street. Law offices lined the road like temples to power, and behind every polished door, men hid the sins of the rich in neat folders tied with ribbon. Inside Mr. Hargreaves's office, the air was stale with old ink and pride. The solicitor rose from his desk, bowing stiffly. "Your Grace, Lady Whitmore." Charlotte's voice trembled only slightly. "My father's estate. You have his will." "Indeed." The man adjusted his spectacles, pulling a folder from a drawer. He laid it carefully on the table, avoiding her eyes. This document was sealed by Lord Whitmore himself, to be opened only upon his death. He slid the papers toward her. Edmund's hand brushed hers as they sat. It was a small gesture, steadying, almost invisible, but she felt it. The seal broke with a crack. The wax fell away like a curse undone. Charlotte began to read. Each line felt colder than the one before. Her father's words were formal, emotionless, as if he were writing about a stranger. "To my daughter, Charlotte Whitmore, I leave the remainder of my estate. All lands, properties, and titles save those under separate trust." She frowned. "Separate trust?" Mr. Hargreaves cleared his throat. "Yes, my lady. A secondary document exists, a codicil, handwritten, unsigned by witnesses, but clearly his. We found it yesterday in a locked drawer." He placed another paper on the desk. The ink had bled slightly, as if written with an unsteady hand. Charlotte read aloud. "If she learns the truth, she must never know who helped her mother die." Her voice broke on the last word. The room went still. Edmund reached for the page. "Who helped her mother die? What does this mean?" "Hargdon, no, Your Grace. There's another name beneath the line, but it's been struck out heavily." He turned the paper under the light. The ink was smeared, almost carved into the parchment. Charlotte leaned closer. Her pulse thudded in her ears. She could almost see it. The curve of a letter, the shape of a name. It began with an A. Hargreaves shook his head. "Impossible to read." The Duke's jaw tightened. "I'll have it examined." The solicitor nodded quickly. "There is more." He handed her another folded note, a smaller one sealed with dark blue wax. "This was attached to the document. Addressed to you, my lady." Charlotte hesitated before opening it. The paper trembled in her hands. Her mother's handwriting flowed across the page. "My dearest child, if this letter finds you, then courage did not fail you. Do not believe what they told you about me. There was someone who tried to help, someone who loved you once, even from the shadows. Trust the man who listens before he speaks. He will lead you to the truth." Charlotte's eyes blurred. The ink shimmered where her tears fell. She looked at Edmund. Her voice was barely a whisper. "She meant you." He shook his head slowly. "Your mother couldn't have known me." "Maybe not by name," she said softly, "but she knew someone would come." The Duke's gaze held hers. His expression softened. Then his tone changed, colder, measured. "You said the codicil was found in a locked drawer. Who else had access to it?" Hargreaves hesitated. "Only his clerk and one other." "Who?" "Lady Selina Ashworth." Charlotte stiffened. "That's impossible. She was a witness to one of the early drafts," the solicitor said quickly. "Years ago, when your father was changing the inheritance terms." The Duke's voice dropped lower. "Why would she come to us now after hiding something like this?" Hargreaves looked uneasy. "I cannot say, Your Grace, but there is something else." He retrieved a small folded document from the drawer. It was faintly scorched at the edges, found in the same drawer, half burned. "Part of a letter your father received the week your mother died." Charlotte took it carefully. The paper smelled faintly of smoke and sorrow. "You promised she would never know. Nothing else, no name. Just that one line." Her hands shook. The Duke stood beside her now, his presence grounding her. He spoke softly but firmly. "We take everything. Every document, every letter." Hargreaves nodded, relieved to be rid of them. When they returned to the carriage, Charlotte stared at the folder in her lap. The rain began again, tapping against the glass. She whispered, "An A, who could it be?" Edmund's gaze was distant. "Selina's name begins with an S." His voice was careful, thoughtful, but Ashworth begins with an A. Charlotte turned to him slowly. "You think she was part of it?" "I think she knows more than she's told us, and she won't stop until we find out why." Charlotte leaned her head against the carriage window. The glass was cold, but her heart felt warmer than it had in years. "I'm not afraid anymore," she said softly. "Good," Edmund answered, "because this is where the real battle begins." Outside, the fog thickened. In its folds, London hid too many secrets. And in the quiet space between heartbeats, Charlotte felt her mother's words linger. "Trust the man who listens before he speaks." She looked at the Duke, his profile steady in the dim light. And for the first time she understood. Her mother hadn't only written about truth. She had written about love. Evening settled over London like a restless sigh. Gas lamps flickered to life, painting the streets in trembling gold. Inside Ashbourne Manor, every shadow seemed to listen. Charlotte sat by the fire, clutching the folder they had brought from the solicitor. The flames reflected in her eyes, turning blue to molten silver. Each paper inside carried a different kind of pain. Each word whispered her mother's name. Edmund paced behind her. He had been silent for a long time, the kind of silence that built walls inside a man. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet but sharp. Selina knew. He stopped pacing. Her name begins with an A. Ashworth. Your father's codicil mentioned a name beginning with A, and she was at his house before your mother died. Charlotte looked up slowly. You think she helped him? I think she hid something. And she's the only one left who can tell us what. Charlotte rose, setting the folder on the table. Her expression was calm, too calm for the storm behind her eyes. Then let's ask her. Edmund's brow furrowed. Tonight? Yes. She'll never expect it. He hesitated, studying her face. You've changed. She tilted her head. Do you disapprove? He smiled faintly. I'm terrified, but I'm proud. They left before the hour struck 9. The city was quiet, cloaked in fog. Selina's townhouse stood at the edge of Grosvenor Square, elegant red brick and far too still. When the butler opened the door, Edmund handed him a card. The Duke of Ashbourne and Lady Whitmore. The man's eyes widened, but he stepped aside. Selina will see you in the drawing room, he murmured. The room glittered with opulence. Velvet drapes, marble statues, the faint perfume of roses and deceit. Selina sat by the window in a crimson gown, her hair arranged perfectly, her smile almost kind. What an unexpected pleasure, she said softly. Or perhaps a predictable one. Charlotte stepped forward. You lied to me. Selina's smile didn't waver. I told you what you needed to hear. You said you were my mother's friend. And I was. But friendship dies when fear takes its place. Edmund's tone hardened. Fear of what? Selina turned her gaze to him, unflinching. Of your father's temper. Of the truth of myself. Charlotte's voice trembled. You were there that night, weren't you? Selina's eyes darkened. Yes, the word fell like a stone in a well. Charlotte's hand gripped the back of a chair. You watched him hurt her. Selina shook her head quickly. No, I didn't watch. I arrived too late. Your mother had already fallen. Fallen. Charlotte's breath caught. You mean he... Selina's voice cracked. He pushed her. I heard the scream from the corridor. The room spun. Charlotte swayed, but Edmund caught her before she stumbled. Selina looked away, guilt written in every line of her face. I wanted to tell you, she said softly. But he threatened me. He said if I spoke, you'd suffer the same fate. Edmund's voice was low, dangerous. And yet you still visited him. Selina met his eyes. I was trying to protect what was left of her legacy. There were documents, money, and inheritance meant for Charlotte. I thought if I stayed close, I could keep it safe. Charlotte's tears fell silently. You let me believe my mother abandoned me. Selina's voice broke. I let you survive. Sometimes lies are mercy. Edmund's hands clenched at his sides. Mercy doesn't leave bruises. Selina rose slowly. I'm not asking forgiveness, but you deserve to know the rest. She crossed the room to a cabinet, opened a hidden drawer, and drew out an old envelope sealed in blue wax. Your mother wrote this days before she died. She gave it to me and told me to send it if anything happened to her. I never did. I was too afraid. Charlotte took the envelope with trembling fingers. Her name was written in her mother's delicate hand. She opened it carefully. A single folded page, faded ink, soft as breath. My sweet Charlotte, if you read this, I am gone. You will hear many things about me, but only one matters. I never stopped loving you. The man who helps you will carry the same eyes as kindness itself. Trust him. And forgive those who feared the truth. They are already punished by their own hearts. Charlotte pressed the paper to her chest, her tears wetting the ink. Her voice came small. She forgave you, Selina. Selina turned away, shoulders shaking. Then she was wiser than I'll ever be. Edmund placed a hand on Charlotte's shoulder. We should go. Charlotte nodded, folding the letter carefully. Before leaving, she looked at Selina one last time. You said fear killed my mother. Don't let it kill you too. Selina's lips trembled. It already has. Outside, the night felt heavier but cleaner. Charlotte stepped into the carriage, holding her mother's letter close. She turned to Edmund. She was brave. Even at the end, he looked at her with quiet pride. Just like her daughter. She smiled faintly. You think too kindly of me. Not kindly, he said. Honestly. As the carriage rolled through the fog, Charlotte leaned against him, her head resting on his shoulder. The city blurred outside, and for a moment she allowed herself to breathe. When she closed her eyes, she could almost hear her mother's voice whispering through the rain. Forgive and live, my love. Forgive and live. And for the first time, Charlotte believed she might. Spring came early to Ashbourne. The frost melted slow, leaving the earth soft and new. The gardens bloomed again. Wild roses, lavender, jasmine climbing the stone walls like old memories trying to find their way to light. Charlotte stood among them in a pale dress the color of morning. Her hands brushed the petals absently. She no longer counted her steps when she walked. She no longer flinched when someone spoke her name. Peace still felt strange, but not impossible. From the terrace, she heard Edmund's voice calling. He stood by the balustrade, holding 2 cups of tea and a half-smile that never quite stayed straight. You'll catch cold out here, Lady Whitmore. She smiled faintly. Then bring the warmth to me, Your Grace. He laughed softly, walking toward her. The sound always made her heart tighten, not with pain, but with memory of all the times she never thought she would hear laughter again. He handed her the cup. Steam curled between their fingers. For a long while, they simply watched the garden. You've changed everything, he said finally. The house breathes again. Charlotte looked at him with quiet affection. I only opened the windows. He shook his head. No, you opened the past. And somehow it stopped haunting these walls. She sipped her tea, eyes distant. You think ghosts care about walls? They do when someone finally listens, he said gently. She met his gaze. You listen too much, Edmund. Only when it's you. He said it like truth, not charm. And her heart, once guarded as a fortress, softened. The servant spoke kindly now. The housekeeper hummed when she walked through the halls. Even the cold portraits on the staircase seemed less judgmental. But peace rarely comes without tests. One morning a letter arrived. No seal, no name. Just her own written across the front in hurried ink. Charlotte hesitated before opening it. Inside, one line. The man you trust knows more than he admits. She stared at the paper for a long time, her pulse quickening. When Edmund entered moments later, she folded it quickly and slipped it into her pocket. He noticed. Bad news. I'm not sure yet. He studied her face but didn't press. Instead, he handed her another envelope. This one from the solicitor. Your father's remaining affairs, he said. I thought it best we read it together. She opened it slowly. The contents were dull at first. Inventories, signatures, lists of debts and land, until the final page. A single note pinned to the bottom, written in an unfamiliar hand. Payment received from E.A. Charlotte froze. The initials bled into her vision. E.A. Her eyes lifted to Edmund. He was watching her unaware. E.A., she whispered. He frowned. What is it? This payment, to my father before mother's death. It's signed with your initials. The silence that followed was unbearable. Edmund's face changed, not guilt, but something heavier. Recognition. Charlotte's voice shook. Tell me it isn't you. He exhaled, closing his eyes. It is, but not what you think. Her hands trembled. Then tell me what I'm supposed to think. He took a slow step toward her. Years ago, before your mother died, your father approached my family for a business arrangement. He needed funds and said it was for trade, for expansion. My father agreed. I signed the payment after his death. The initials are mine, but the reason wasn't. Her pulse thudded. So you gave him the money that started all of this? Unknowingly, yes. I was young. I didn't question him. He used the money to keep her trapped. Charlotte turned away, her hand pressed to her mouth. The walls seemed to lean closer. The air thinned. Edmund reached for her, but stopped inches away. I would give everything to undo it. She faced him slowly. Her eyes shimmered, not with anger, but something deeper. The exhaustion of another betrayal finding its way into her story. You saved me, she whispered, but you also helped him destroy her. He nodded, shame cutting through every word. Yes, and I have lived with that since the day I learned it. Her tears came silently. He stepped closer, careful as if she might vanish. I didn't tell you because I thought the truth would take away your peace. You don't get to decide what I can bear. He closed his eyes, the words hitting their mark. You're right. The fire in the hearth crackled low and uneasy. Charlotte moved to the window, her reflection pale against the glass. The garden below shimmered with new blossoms. Everything alive. Everything fragile. Do you hate me? He asked quietly. She turned. Her expression softened. No, but I need time to forgive you. He nodded slowly. Then I'll wait. He started to leave, then paused at the door. Without turning, he said softly, I never meant to be part of your pain, Charlotte. I only wanted to be your peace. When he was gone, she pressed her forehead against the cold glass. Outside, the first petals of spring fell gently to the ground. Sometimes, she thought, love didn't end with heartbreak. Sometimes it began there. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the anonymous letter again. Her eyes lingered on the words. The man you trust knows more than he admits. Who sent it? And why now? As the sun sank behind the hills, Charlotte folded the letter slowly. The ink on her fingers smeared faintly, not gone, only hidden, like truth itself. The next morning came cold and still. Ashbourne Manor seemed to hold its breath, the kind of silence that waits for a storm or an ending. Charlotte had not slept. The letters lay open on her desk. Her mother's last words, her father's confession, the payment marked EA. The fire had burned to gray embers. Even the morning light hesitated before crossing her window. Downstairs, Edmund waited. He hadn't slept either. He sat in the library, coat unbuttoned, eyes shadowed with the weight of everything unspoken. When she entered, the room felt smaller. She didn't look angry. She looked tired. We need to talk, she said quietly. He rose immediately. Yes. The silence between them was careful. Then she spoke. Someone sent me a letter, anonymous. It warned me about you. He stiffened. When? Yesterday. Before we found the document with your initials. He took a step closer. Where is it? In my desk. His jaw tightened. Whoever sent it knew how to reach you privately. That's not coincidence. Her voice softened. I'm not afraid of them, Edmund. I'm afraid of losing the only person who never lied to me until now. He met her eyes. I lied by silence. Not deceit. The difference feels the same, she whispered. He closed the distance between them. Charlotte, look at me. I was 22 when I signed that payment. My father had just died. I was desperate to hold the estate together. Lord Whitmore came with papers, legitimate, official. He said the funds were for rebuilding your family's lands. I believed him. Months later, I learned what he truly did with it. Charlotte's eyes searched his face. And you did nothing. I was sent abroad. By the time I returned, your mother was gone, and he had turned your house into a cage. I tried to see you, but he refused me. He said you were ill. When Maeve's letter came, begging for help, I knew what I had to do. I used the same money that damned me to buy your freedom. She covered her mouth, emotion breaking her composure. You used it to undo the sin. If only it could erase the rest. She stepped closer, voice trembling. You carried that secret all this time. He nodded, and every day it burned. But I wanted to be sure before I spoke, to earn your trust before I risked breaking it. Charlotte's tears spilled silently. You didn't need to earn what you already had. You only needed to tell me. He lowered his head, shame shadowing his face. I was afraid. Of me. Of losing you. Her hand lifted, resting against his cheek. The gesture was small, fragile, but it steadied him more than any absolution. You already lost me once, she whispered. Don't let fear take me again. He closed his eyes, pressing his hand over hers. You forgive me, not yet. But I love you. The words broke something open in both of them. For a moment, the world stopped breathing. Then he pulled her gently into his arms. Not with hunger, but with reverence. I never deserved that, he murmured. Then earn it, she said softly. He smiled faintly. I intend to spend the rest of my life trying. They stood together by the window, watching sunlight finally find its way through the clouds. The air smelled of wet earth and new beginnings. Later that afternoon, a messenger arrived. A plain envelope. No seal, no name. Edmund opened it while Charlotte read beside him. Inside one, a single piece of paper, neatly folded. Your father was not the only one she feared. Beneath the line, a name written in faded ink. Arthur Hargreaves. Charlotte's hand flew to her lips. The solicitor. Edmund's eyes darkened. He managed your father's affairs. He witnessed the false documents. He's the last link. He rose immediately, fire returning to his stride. No more shadows. It ends today. Charlotte caught his arm. Not with anger, with quiet strength. If we confront him, we do it together. No more secrets. He nodded once, resolute. Together, then. They left before dusk. By the time they reached Fleet Street, the air was thick with the scent of rain again, the same kind that had followed them since the beginning. Mr. Hargreaves looked up when they entered, startled. "Your Grace, Lady Whitmore." Edmund didn't waste words. "You were my father's solicitor. And hers. You knew about the payment. You knew what it caused." The man paled. I only followed instructions." "From whom?" He swallowed hard. "From Lord Whitmore, of course." Charlotte stepped forward. "And from Lady Selina Ashworth." The silence cracked. His eyes flickered, thought too fast. Too revealing. "So she paid you to hide the codicil," Edmund said. "The one naming her." Hargreaves trembled. "You don't understand. It wasn't her idea." "Then whose?" The man's voice dropped to a whisper. "Your father's, Your Grace. He wanted to tie your family and hers. Through marriage, through money, through silence. Selina was his pawn, not his master." Edmund froze. "My father." The realization struck him like thunder. The man who had raised him, the man he'd admired, had built the bridge that led to Charlotte's suffering. Charlotte reached for his hand. He didn't pull away. Her voice was steady now. "Then both our fathers chose darkness. Maybe we were meant to find each other in the light." Edmund looked at her, something fierce and tender in his eyes. "You still believe in light after all this?" "Always," she said softly. "It's the only thing that makes forgiveness possible." They left the office together, leaving the trembling solicitor behind. Outside, the rain began again, not heavy, just enough to cleanse the air. Charlotte tilted her face upward with quiet awe. She turned to him, eyes shining. "What now?" "Now," he said, "we build something that doesn't need secrets to stand." And when he took her hand this time, it wasn't to lead her. It was to walk beside her. That evening, the bells of St. Mary's rang again, the same that once tolled for sorrow. But now their sound carried differently. Not mourning. Promise. Charlotte looked at him across the firelight later that night. "You said love doesn't hurt." He smiled faintly. "It shouldn't, but it teaches." She leaned against him, her voice a whisper. "Then I've learned enough for a lifetime." The wind outside turned gentle. The fire burned steady. The ghosts finally quieted. Ashbourne had been a house of secrets. Now it was a home. Weeks later, the first roses of summer bloomed. Charlotte walked through the garden barefoot, her laughter soft under the open sky. Edmund followed, watching her as if she were the answer to every question he'd ever asked of heaven. When she reached the fountain, she turned to him and smiled. "You never told me what EA really stands for." He laughed. "Edmund Ashbourne. But after all this, perhaps it should mean something else, what?" "Endless atonement." She shook her head, smiling through tears. "No, endless affection." He reached for her hand. And this time no shadows followed. Summer returned to Ashbourne like forgiveness made visible. The hills were green again, the river clear, the air warm with lilac and honey. Charlotte walked through the gardens barefoot, her pale dress brushing against roses reborn from the same earth that once knew sorrow. Every morning the Duke found her there, reading by the fountain, tending to new flowers, humming softly to herself. The light loved her now. It touched her gently like gratitude. Edmund often said the manor had changed because of her. But she knew better. The house had simply learned to breathe again. In the evenings they would sit by the fire, no longer haunted by letters or ghosts. Sometimes they spoke. Sometimes silence was enough. And every silence carried peace instead of pain. Charlotte kept her mother's letter in a small box near the window. She no longer read it to understand the past. She read it to remember how far she had come. Her heart, once afraid of its own reflection, now beat freely, steady, unguarded, alive. And when Edmund took her hand at twilight, she no longer wondered if she deserved happiness. She simply lived it. The garden bloomed in colors it had never dared before. Blue roses, the kind no one believed could grow. But they did, quietly, beautifully, stubbornly. And in that garden, two souls who had been broken by secrets found what the world could never give them. Not titles, not wealth, just peace. Love is not thunder. It does not arrive to shatter or to demand. It comes like the first morning after a long night, soft, uncertain, but full of light. Charlotte learned that healing does not erase what happened. It transforms it. The pain that once silenced her became the soil where her gentleness grew roots. And in that quiet strength, she discovered that love is not meant to rescue. It is meant to stay. Edmund learned, too, that redemption is not a grand gesture but 1,000 small choices. To listen, to wait, to protect without owning. He once believed power could fix what was broken, but it was tenderness that finally did. Their story was never about perfection. It was about persistence. Two hearts that refused to close completely, even when the world gave them every reason to. Healing is never loud. It happens in the small moments, in the way you breathe easier, laugh again, trust a hand that used to scare you. It happens when pain becomes memory and memory becomes wisdom. And love, the true kind, does not promise to keep you from falling. It promises to hold you when you do. In the end, they didn't need the world's approval or forgiveness. They only needed peace within themselves. And that peace grew quietly between them, like blue roses in a garden that once knew nothing but winter. If this story touched something inside you, let it stay a while. Let it remind you that love, no matter how late it arrives, still knows the way home. Charlotte's journey is not just hers. It belongs to anyone who has ever been hurt and dared to love again. Anyone who has looked at their reflection and chosen kindness over shame. Anyone who has believed that even broken hearts can bloom. May you find a little of that courage tonight, to forgive, to begin again, to believe that gentle love, the kind that listens, heals, and stays, is still real. And if this story made you feel seen, stay with us. Subscribe to the channel, leave your thoughts in the comments, and share this story with someone who needs hope tonight. Because sometimes a story isn't just something we watch, it's something that watches over us. Until the next tale, where hearts heal and love finds its quiet way home.